Tonight, a grieving mother in the courtroom, day after day. For the first time, we hear her speak.
He's bruised up, his eyes were closed. It's just not a good scene.
Peggy O'Keefe, the mother of John O'Keefe, takes the stand in the case against Karen Reed.
I said, "You just left him there?" She said, "Yes, I just left him there."
Describing her encounter with Reed the day her son died. Plus, Alan Jackson challenges another key prosecution witness.
And that was a false statement, wasn't it?
Technically.
Technically?
How are these tough cross-examinations coming across in the courtroom? We'll take you inside. Canton Confidential. The Karen Reed murder trial starts right now.
It was a day filled with emotional testimony and some fiery exchanges involving defense attorney Alan Jackson. Good evening, I'm Glenn Jones. JC is off tonight. 4 witnesses in total took the stand. Kerry Roberts, Peggy O'Keefe, State Trooper Nicholas Guarino, as well as Canton paramedic Daniel Whitley. They all testified about the morning John O'Keefe died. Roberts and Peggy O'Keefe are who we will focus on tonight. It was Roberts' second time on the stand, but the first time she was cross-examined by the defense, while Peggy O'Keefe testified for the first time. And after that testimony, we heard from the father of Karen Reed on the courthouse steps. Our Melody Mendez is covering it all from Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham. Mel, this was an eventful day.
Glenn, it was, and it was a very emotional day. By the end, we heard from 2 parents today, bound by tragedy, with 2 very different versions of, or theories, I should say, of what happened the night of January 28th, 2022. First, we heard from Peggy O'Keefe, as you mentioned, with absolutely heartbreaking testimony on the stand. Take a look.
Tell me a little bit about your immediate family.
My daughter.
For the first time, we hear directly from the mother of John O'Keefe. Peggy O'Keefe taking the stand in the retrial of Karen Reed and reliving the moment she heard from one of John's longtime friends the morning of January 29th.
She said John was found in a snowbank, and I didn't understand, which I said, "What do you mean, found in a snowbank?"
She broke down describing how John's nephew, who he was raising, took the news.
He was very upset once we told him, because he slept over a friend's house the night before, and he just said, "I'll never see him again."
And she told the jury about the call she got on her way to the hospital when she asked Karen Reed what happened.
And she said, we went to a party. I left him there. I said, "You just left him there?"
She described seeing Reed for the first time after learning her son was gone.
I hear Karen Reed yell, "Peg, is he dead? Is he dead, Peg? Peg, is he dead?" And I just kept walking, and then I asked, I don't know who it was, a nurse or a worker at the hospital, and I said, "What is she doing here?"
Later that morning, back at John's home in Canton, she would see Reed again, this time with Reed's father.
They came in, and then he said, "Do you mind if we go upstairs and get a couple of her things?" Which I never should have let them go up there. But
she says Reed and her father were upstairs in the home for 15 minutes before leaving, and the prosecution questioned what they did during that time. Outside court, William Reed saying they did nothing wrong.
I know the truth. I was there. I was in the O'Keefe house that day. I know why we went back. I know what we did when we went there. I know how long we were upstairs. I know it all. And I don't lie. At my age, I answer to another maker.
Reed telling us he admired John O'Keefe very much for the role he took on as guardian, and Karen did too, saying he's sensitive to the pain the O'Keefes have suffered, but it wasn't at the hands of his daughter.
It's not lost on us that the O'Keefe family has endured tremendous pain. You can't help but see what you saw today and hear it and not be empathized by it. And I'm certainly, all right, sympathetic to that. And I just, give her space. Karen Reed is innocent. She's not responsible.
So yes, a highly emotional day in court today. Now, We did speak with Karen on her way out of court. She said very little, just said that she was happy with the way things went today and did say that they were tired. Glenn?
And conversely, Melody, William Reed had a lot to say. It made me wonder if maybe he would testify in this second trial. He didn't in the first trial. I understand he was asked about this today. Right. What did he say?
Yeah, you're right. He was asked exactly that. Are you hoping to testify? And he had a 3-word response. I hope so. Glenn, we know he's on that list of potential witnesses, so he could be testifying in this trial. We'll have to wait and see if he actually does take the stand.
Melody Mendez for us outside the courthouse once again today. Thank you, Mel. Now let's bring in NBC 10 courtroom insider Sue O'Connell, as well as NBC 10 chief legal analyst Michael Coyne. All right, Sue, just about every day in the first trial, and so far in this trial, we've watched Peggy O'Keefe sit there silently, sometimes emotionally, watching these proceedings unfold. Today she took the stand, and it felt like a big moment watching it on television. How did it feel in the room?
Oh, it absolutely was a huge moment. It was, and the jury, of course, is sort of new to this. This is only their second day. And watching this testimony today, also Kerry Roberts had some very emotional testimony this morning as well. And you could see themselves just reliving this grief, this terrible grief that the O'Keefe family has been through, not only John's death, but her daughter's death, her son-in-law's death, the kids having no guardian, you know, their guardian being lost. And it really hit home. People were really, you could see the faces of the jurors who were empathetic, they were sorrowful. And then after she finished testifying, she went back and sat down. Remember, the O'Keefe family is facing the jury because of the way the courtroom is set up and how small it is. And she sat there while her family members, there was a sidebar, her family members comforted her, and I could see a couple of the jurors looking right at her very sympathetically, obviously. And to Mr. Reed's point, they also were looking very pained during her testimony as well. So there's no way around the tragedy and the grief that this family has gone through.
So, Michael, the defense, of course, has the opportunity to cross-examine Peggy O'Keefe. Alan Jackson actually got up, offered his condolences, and then sat down. Was there any benefit that you can imagine by asking questions for the defense to this particular witness?
No. You know, we talk about this in school. The fact is, you don't look good beating up someone's mother, and especially a murder victim's mom. You know, I got a little choked up when Kerry Roberts said that she had said at one point, "I can't go through this again." And then she takes the stand, and it's emotionally such a heartbreak. And I can't imagine the jury thought any different. And so you've got to be careful when you're cross-examining a witness that you don't go too far. You know, if you do, the sympathies are never with the lawyer, the sympathies are with the witness, because, you know, we're seen as the person in power and we get to ask questions. So it would not have benefited them at all, and I think they made the right move.
All right, before Peggy O'Keefe took the stand, we went into a second day of testimony from Kerry Roberts. She was with Karen Reed when they discovered John O'Keefe in the snow back in 2022. On direct examination, here's what she had to say about Reed's taillight that morning.
Karen pointed out and said, "Look, my taillight." And she said, "Do you think I hit him?" And I said, "No, I don't think you hit him. What are you talking about? Let's just go find him." But the taillight itself, the piece was missing. And as you got closer, there's a metal sort of square, and one of the pieces was sort of sticking out. And I only remember it because I thought if someone walks by that, they're going to catch their jacket on it.
As both of you know, Roberts sort of felt like a bystander in the first trial. She was called, of course, but she wasn't of elevated importance like she has been in the presentation from Brennan, talking about the taillight damage there. Help us understand what you think is going on. Why the movement of this witness to higher up in the presentation?
Well, she really got buried in the last presentation.
Wrongly.
Yeah, she was stuck in the middle of all these witnesses. As you can see, her testimony is incredibly powerful. She was there on the ground with her at critical periods, talking to her, hearing what she had to say, finding John with her at some point. Critical evidence that she has to offer. Unfortunately, part of the problem is that this is now 3 years later. There's multiple times she's appeared to testify, both before the grand jury and at the last trial. Witnesses have inconsistencies in their statement, and that's our job as lawyers, is to really hammer away at that. And I think Alan Jackson did just that.
Speaking of which, Kerry Roberts was not cross-examined the last time. She was, of course, this time. Another way the trial is turning out to be very different.
And that was a false statement, wasn't it?
Technically.
Technically?
Yes,
You're
technically.
getting a little bit pregnant, Ms. Roberts.
Okay, so remember, jurors, I said earlier, comments of counsel are not evidence and you're to disregard them. Ask a question.
Thank you, Your Honor. What do you mean technically?
Technically, I was under oath, and I did not hear Karen asked Jen to Google it.
And yet under oath...
But I knew it happened at that time.
And yet under oath you said you did.
Correct.
And that was a lie, correct?
Objection.
Was that a lie? Did you lie?
I did not intentionally.
But you did.
And
Not intentionally.
okay, that's the end of
Understood
this.
the question, Mr. Jackson.
All right, so I got to ask you about this because, first, let me set it up. What Roberts was talking about there is what she heard the defendant tell Jen McCabe about Googling hypothermia. And Roberts said she misunderstood the question in previous testimony. Right. But Alan Jackson really went after her, tried to hold her accountable. I wonder in the courtroom whether these witnesses who are getting these strong crosses are seen as non-credible, or is it completely forgivable to not have a sharp memory of something that happened so long ago?
All right, so there's a couple of answers to this. Number one, I don't think the jury, if we believe that they haven't been following the case very closely, they may not know that this is related to the Hoslong to die in the cold, right? So this is just kind of hanging out there for some of them. They may not know where it fits yet, right?
Okay.
And yes, it is completely reasonable that you cannot remember something you said to 3 grand juries or this testimony or that interview. But when they keep giving you the report and you keep looking at it and this has been happening already in the case again, they say, well, I don't know, it says I said it, I don't know if I said it or not. It really does just eat away at their credibility a little bit. Like, well, you said it, you were there. Just acknowledge that you said it. It's no big deal. But back to the Hoslong to die in the cold. We have learned from talking to jurors firsthand and secondhand that many of them said we couldn't figure out the expert testimony on that. So we just said it's a wash.
Too complex.
Too complex. We don't know if Jen McCabe did it at the 2 o'clock hour or the 6 o'clock hour. We have no idea. We don't think it's essential. So we're not going to pay attention to it. But guess what? Because of this, it's now back into the conversation because it was contingent upon Karen asking Jen to do the search. That was what the prosecution was saying, and now the defense is going to say, but Karen didn't ask, so why did she do it? Because even if she just misspoke and didn't understand the question and we take her at her word, it reintroduces the issue to this particular trial this time.
I know what Michael's going to tell us because I've been sitting next to him long enough. It's the lawyer's job to make it clear to the jury. So let's talk about the lawyering here for a minute. We already spoke about Alan Jackson on cross. We've certainly seen him take more of a role there in this trial compared to the last trial, at least at this point. Hank Brennan, once a defense attorney for Whitey Bulger, seems to be in complete control of the tenor and style of the Commonwealth's case. So what's your take on the lawyering from both sides so far? I know we're only 2 days in, but these guys seem to be doing it at a high level.
They are, and I think they've both been very aggressive in their approach, both with respect to the presentation of the evidence, the cross-examinations, the arguments on the motions. I mean, the intensity is significantly higher than the last case. What I would like, if there's a criticism, I would like less of the name-calling, less of the theatrics. We always talk about don't personalize the argument. It's not Jackson's doing this or Brennan's doing this. It's the Commonwealth or it's the defendant. Take out some of the personalities that we're seeing more often, and let's focus on the evidence, and let's focus on the death of John O'Keefe, as opposed to some of the nitpicking that's going back and forth with respect to their personalities.
Michael Coyne, Sue O'Connell, thank you very much. Still to come on Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial. The end of an era in Canton. The chief of the embattled police department is retiring. We dig deeper into this changing of the guard in the town of Canton.
Don't miss any of the Karen Reed murder trial. Get the full recap of what happened in court, expert analysis, and what we could see next. This is coverage you won't see anywhere else. Canton Confidential, weeknights at 7 on NBC 10 Boston.
There's a changing of the guard in Canton. Police Chief Helena Rafferty has announced her plans to retire following a long career with the department. Rafferty's retirement comes as her department remains under heavy scrutiny due to its handling of the Karen Reed case. NBC 10's Darren Botello has reaction from Canton residents.
Canton Select Board telling residents this week Police Chief Helena Rafferty plans to retire on June 30th when her contract is up. On Wednesday, we spoke with Canton resident Corinne Coates, who says she knows members of the O'Keefe family.
Joan O'Keefe's niece and nephew are really, as a teacher, my top priority.
She says she supports Chief Rafferty, one of 86 names on this list of potential witnesses released by the Norfolk County DA's office ahead of the retrial.
People take their retirements when they feel like it's appropriate for them financially, and that it just happens to coincide.
In their motion to dismiss ahead of the second trial, Reed's legal team quoting an alleged note Rafferty wrote about evidence in the case.
Quote, that is how it records LOL, no tampering, end quote. LOL, laugh out loud. So the chief of police is laughing in the face of serious Brady violations.
Rafferty, who's been with the department since 1989 and took over as the town's first female chief just months after O'Keefe was found dead, had her contract renewed during the first trial last year. And before this 200-page independent audit of the department was released this year, recommending improvements.
I think that if there was an issue that was directed at Chief Rafferty, it would have came up during the Canton police audit.
The Select Board gave us a statement earlier today calling Rafferty a trailblazer, also saying they'll choose an interim chief in the weeks ahead. We reached out to Rafferty for comment on this story, but haven't heard back as of news time. In Canton, Darren Botello reporting.
Courtroom insider Sue O'Connell is back with me now. I think a one-time Canton resident as well.
10-year Canton resident.
That's right. All right, so Chief Rafferty came in for pretty high marks in that police department audit. So my question for you is this a smart professional getting out on top?
Absolutely.
Or is she running from an incoming storm?
You know, I think that the audit is very clear that there were inadequacies in the Canton Police Department, and they certainly predate Chief Rafferty being there. And for full disclosure, Chief Berkowitz's wife was my daughter's first grade teacher. We didn't socialize with them. They were our neighbors. But when I lived in Canton, the late Chief Berkowitz was our police chief. But at the same time, listen, there are problems that need to be fixed in every single police department across the country. Every city and town should do an audit like Canton did and find out what their inadequacies are, find the money for the budget to do training to fix them, and go ahead and fix them. And obviously, I don't know Chief Rafferty at all. Like you said, there was no problem in the audit with her. Mm-hmm. And of course, she's going to have to get up and testify and talk about whether or not she did or did not do this LOL. But in the end, I agree with what the person who Darren spoke with. If you're in the hot seat, you didn't necessarily like the fire, and you can get out financially, knock yourself out. That's right. What I say.
Well, we should talk about what's happened on the Select Board as well. John Connolly lost his seat. He had served on the board for a long time. Do you think there's a direct line between that voter choice and what's happened with the investigation of John O'Keefe's murder?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the town Select Board way that we do things in Massachusetts can be very confusing for some. They don't have a mayor. They have, this board of selectmen, select people. And most people don't go to the town meetings. I mean, there's a population of, I think, some 20,000 people in Canton. I know they don't all go to the town meetings. So this situation, John O'Keefe's death, the poor investigation by the Canton Police Department, and the other issues really, I think, put a focus on the Select Board, and that gave people an opportunity to run and try and bring new blood in. I think that when this trial is over, if it's ever really finally over, Canton will have an opportunity to sort of reset and maybe become a model of how select boards should oversee police departments and where that money should come from, and maybe they can become one of the best trained local police departments in the country.
That's a really good point. Sometimes trauma sparks the kind of change that is necessary.
Correct.
Sue O'Connell, thank you very much. Let's get to a viewer question before we leave you today. We've been getting a lot of these. This one is coming from Linny, who wants to know whether in the Commonwealth's opening statement, here's the question. Lenny wants to know what is about the damaging information for the case as it relates to John O'Keefe's DNA on the broken taillight. So Lenny's question was answered in an opening statement from Hank Brennan. Here's a bit.
When the defendant left Mr. O'Keefe behind, took with her something of Mr. O'Keefe called trace evidence. You'll learn on the back of her Lexus, around the taillight area, was John's DNA, and stuck to the side, grasping one last piece of John O'Keefe's hair.
There's Hank Brennan answering that question about DNA on the actual SUV. If you have any questions about this case, send them our way. We've got the email address up on your screen, canton.confidential@nbcuni.com. We'll answer as many questions as we can. And just a quick reminder about our coverage. Remember to join us here on Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial, every weeknight at 7. We'll have a full recap of the latest developments from court as well as legal analysis. Plus, episodes will be streaming on Peacock starting on Sunday.